All right, today we're going to dive into a really powerful critique of the modern world, and it comes from the philosopher Hasan Spiker. His big idea is that the system we all live in, the one that feels so permanent, so natural, is actually starting to come apart at the seams. So let's unravel his argument.
It's a strange feeling, isn't it? We're constantly told we live in this age of incredible freedom and individuality, with more options for everything than ever before. But then you look around, from our cities to our social media feeds, and you get this weird sense that everything is kind of the same. Why is that?
And this right here just nails that disconnect. Modernity promised us freedom, but what did many of us get? A whole lot of anxiety. It promised individuality, but we look around and find ourselves living in a global monoculture. And it promised progress, but for a lot of people, that progress can feel totally meaningless.
So to really make sense of this, we're going to turn to Hasan Spiker's work. He's put together this incredibly sharp historical framework for understanding the very foundations of our world, and, more importantly, why he thinks those foundations are now starting to crack. Spiker actually coins a term for this global system we're in, columns. Now, it's an acronym, and it stands for the civilization of liberal, universal, modern, neutral, and scientific. The key thing here is he's not just talking about modern times in general. He's arguing that a very specific civilization, one that champions individualism, claims it's the right way for everyone, and pretends to be scientifically neutral, has basically become the default setting for all of humanity.
And here's his main point, the core of his thesis. This civilization, this whole grand project of modernity, is becoming incoherent. It can't justify itself anymore. The promises are ringing hollow, and the intellectual and moral structure is, as he puts it, unraveling.
So how did we even get to this point of unraveling? Well, Spiker says it was no accident. It was the result of 5 very specific historical breaks. He calls them severances that systematically took the pre-modern world apart. Let's look at how this all happened.
These are the 5 ruptures that completely redefined the Western world. So first, he says it all started with separating divine law from everyday life, which made faith a more private, spiritual thing. Then came the split between church and state, creating 2 different spheres of power, one for your soul and one for society. After that, we got the big divorce of faith and reason, where beliefs started being seen as something private, maybe even irrational. But the final 2, which happened more recently, were the real game changers. The 4th was splitting the objective world out there from our subjective minds in here, turning reality into something you just measure, not experience. And finally, number 5, morality was cut loose from any anchor in reality itself. It just became a matter of personal taste or what society agrees on, not some objective truth.
This quote from Descartes is just a perfect illustration of that 4th rupture. When a genius like him, one of the fathers of modern philosophy, says it's useless to ask about the purpose, the why of things, science takes a dramatic turn. It stops asking, what is a tree for, and starts only asking, how does a tree work? The world suddenly becomes a machine that we just need to analyze, not a creation with any built-in meaning.
And this quote from John Locke, it just captures that 5th and final break perfectly. If there's no objective reality to ground our morals in, then what's the highest good? Locke's answer is brutally simple. Whatever feels good right now. That ancient search for the good life just collapses into satisfying our immediate desires, because, what else is there?
Okay, so those were 5 huge philosophical shifts. But what do they actually look like in our day-to-day lives? The consequence, Spiker argues, is this thing he calls the Great Modern Uniformity.
And this is where the theory really hits home. You see the world get rebuilt in this new image. Architecture becomes all about function. So you get identical glass boxes from Dubai to Dallas. Work becomes mechanized, all about efficiency instead of craft. Our social lives get hollowed out, leading to what someone once called dying from pure boredom. And even our homes, through the IKEAization of our living spaces, they all start to look eerily similar.
I mean, really think about it. You could be dropped into a Starbucks or a McDonald's kitchen anywhere on Earth, and you'd have no idea if you were in Pakistan or Pennsylvania. That right there is the triumph of the Great Modern Uniformity, a perfectly rational, efficient, and identical space that's totally disconnected from any local culture or tradition.
So what's the ultimate point of this whole critique? For Spiker, this isn't just some academic game. It's an urgent warning for our time.
For anyone who still sees this modern project as the only way forward, Spiker has some pretty stark advice. He says this is the time for offloading, not for jumping on the bandwagon.
In other words, trying to fully commit to this system right now is like buying a ticket for a ship that's already taking on water.
And that really leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? Spiker's analysis is a powerful diagnosis of our present situation, but it really forces us to look ahead. If the civilization of columns is truly unraveling, if its promises have failed and its very foundations are broken, then what in the world is waiting to take its place?